detail of biosafety, but when they start talking to a scientist, the scientist is completely disengaged and they can't find a way to serve. And that's kind of what this lecture is about, is understanding people, what motivates people, and how you can lead different people with different personalities. So I want to start with basic psychology and talk a little bit about Maslow, Abraham Maslow. Now, many of us, if we've taken a psychology 101 class, have heard about Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. But what we don't know when we take an advanced psychology class is we start to understand why Maslow developed this in the first place. Maslow was fascinated with where behavior began, meaning he wanted to know why people behaved. Why did behavior start? And what Maslow discovered was that behavior, all behavior, no matter what it is, starts with a basic need, a need that you have as a human being. And so, for example, if you are asked the question, why do you brush your teeth? This is an example. Why do you brush your teeth? Anybody give me an answer? Why do you brush your teeth?
You learned that.
Say again?
You learned that
Well,
you should.
you learned it, absolutely, but why do you keep doing it? Why do you brush your teeth? To keep your breath fresh. Why do you want to keep your breath fresh? You don't want to offend other people. That's right. That's what we call belongingness or social needs. So Maslow would say you're brushing your teeth. If you brush your teeth because you don't want to offend people with bad breath, it's social needs. Why else do you brush your teeth?
Keep a mouth healthy.
What happens if you don't brush your teeth?
You lose your teeth.
You lose your teeth. What's wrong with losing your teeth? You can't do what? Well, you can't eat. That's number one, it's physiological. But also some people like their smile with their teeth, and that's self-esteem. And last but not least, is there anybody in here afraid of dentists and the pain that it may cause to get teeth worked on? And that's why you brush your teeth? That's safety and security. What Maslow argued is that all behavior begins and ends, thank you, with a challenge to basic needs. So the question that comes to you as a scientist or you as a leader, when you're behaving and you're responding to things, which is controlling you? Are you controlling your emotions and your behaviors, or is your emotions and your behaviors controlling you?
The latter.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the scary part. And see, that's where leadership begins to fall. Leadership you begin to have a challenge demonstrating what you know and what you're capable of doing when your emotions and your behaviors are driving you rather than you controlling your emotions and your behaviors. And that's where we run into, because we won't get along with everybody. I wish we did. I wish that I could stand up in front of all of you and you would tell me at the end of this lecture that you love me and that you like me. But there will be some people out there that say, I don't like this guy, or maybe he rubs me the wrong way, and there's nothing I can do about that. It's just because my personality is in direct contrast with you, which goes back to Carl Jung. We won't talk about that right away. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I want you to consider some things. And this is not just for here. I want you to consider it for people you love, for people outside. This is psychology. It's not just in labs, it's outside of labs. What happens to someone when a basic need is challenged? What happens to them? Say it again. They get disturbed. Yeah, if you want to know what happens when a basic need is challenged, I want you to do me a favor. Take a deep breath, blow it out, and then don't breathe. Hold it as long as you can. And then right before you're going to breathe, cover your mouth. Cover your mouth. And that initial feeling you get when you try to breathe and you can't, that's what happens when a basic need is challenged. Now, there are some people, and well, it's not human suffocation. It's the deprivation of air, which is a physiological need. But I want you to get that feeling, and let me explain why. Does anybody know a particular religion? It's not even religious, it's just a lifestyle. Maybe religion, maybe it could be. Anybody know a particular sect, a religion that personally and intentionally deprives them of basic needs so that in the area of a challenge, they can remain solely focused and can assess risk and can rationalize normally, even though chaos is occurring around them? Anybody know anybody like that?
I
What
know
is
in
it?
Islam they do fasting in
Yes,
Ramadan.
that's correct. Ramadan and Eid and fasting is exactly that, deprives them of one need. That's correct. But there's a religion that attacks all of them. And they wear an outfit
Jainism.
Say again?
Jainism.
It's Buddhist monks. The Buddhist monks will attack physiological needs through fasting. They will attack safety and security because part of your job is to go to places in chaos. They will attack a sense of belongingness by making everyone look the same exact way. That's self-esteem, by the way. But they attack belongingness by putting you in isolation and you can't talk or speak to other people. They do this intentionally so that you can get in control of your emotions and your behaviors when you're deprived of basic needs. That's an intent. That's what fasting does, is you are reminded of that, but you're also, what are you gonna do when you're hungry? How are you gonna control yourself? It's a form of discipline. And so when you have a basic need that's challenged as a leader, it stirs you up. It can become an emotional issue. It can become a behavioral response. And what your job is to do as a leader is to take a step back at that moment, take a deep breath and be able to rationalize and take a look at what the situation is and determine, is this battle worth winning because I have a whole ward? Meaning as a biosafety officer, and that's what I'm worried about, biorisk management, is it worth arguing with a scientist where if I win, all I've done is disengage this scientist from future interaction? Is that worth it? And you have to really take a look at biorisk management and determine that. Mental noise is produced, which in turn increases the desire to behave or act. So if you deprive yourself of air, you're going to have this desire to breathe. And if somebody gets in your way, you're going to push them out of the way to get that thing. Now, does your behavior, your response to the basic need challenge make your job easier or harder? That's the question, meaning your response when you're being challenged. Is it going to produce easier job for you or harder going forward? And that's the key. As a biosafety professional, I really truly believe your mentality, and I'm treating all of you like leaders here in safety. Your mentality is a service mentality. It's not a police mentality. If you're trying to find wrong, you will be able to find wrong in anything you look for. If you're trying to look for what's right, you'll be able to do that as well. But serving means I'm coming in and I'm promoting what I hope you would be willing to do. I'm not telling you to stop doing what you need to do. Let me explain what I mean by that. This is where it gets really big, and I don't know if I can I mark on that wall right there? Is that something I can do?
Yes.
But I don't have any markers. Let me explain what happened with B.F. Skinner and Maslow. Many people don't know the battle. B.F. Skinner, world famous behaviorist, Maslow's hierarchies. They hated one another when they were alive, but right as Maslow and Skinner were reaching the ends of their lives, they actually came together in a really beautiful way. They found that their science and psychology complemented one another. As soon as I get a marker out, I'll show you what I'm talking about. The reason why it's so important that we talk about leadership, the stop versus start, and you'll see why it's important, is because when you're telling someone to stop something, what are you doing? Well, this is good. I love that. You are aggravating. Why are you aggravating? See, this is an advanced psychological question. Why do you aggravate someone who is behaving when you tell them to stop?
So we hope that we kind of
Yes, okay, again, but we gotta get to the basic foundation, and I've given you the answer. It's an advanced psychological question. When someone is behaving and you tell them to stop behaving, why do they get frustrated? Why do they resent you?
Because they think it's personal. They
You
think you're
take it
telling.
personal because other people are doing it. Why are you just picking on me? Okay, but still not at the basic fundamental level.
You are trying to control their behavior.
Okay, maybe, yeah, they have the individual, but why? Let's get down to it. You ready? Let me rephrase the question. You ready? Why would you get frustrated and resent me if I told you to stop brushing your teeth?
humiliation.
Well, but you dig deeper.
I controlled by you.
Yeah.
Your control is an issue. That's right. That's a basic, but you're still not getting to it.
Why are you telling me to stop?
Okay, you're getting there. You still.
It's my right to be what I want.
Yeah,
It's
also against their freedom, like.
against their freedom. This is good. You guys are getting closer.
You're interrupting my pattern.
You're what?
Privating them to their base your extra needs.
You're.
Like regarding.
Yeah, keep going. What are you saying?
Depriving them.
Thank you,
for
you have deprived them of a basic need. And what happens when you deprive someone of a basic need?
So we shut them down.
Oh, they get very, now get ready, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna blow your mind and remove the political aspects, I'm stalling here for kids, okay? I'm stalling for kids. How could we get great vaccine compliance among people who don't want their freedoms taken away?
Prohibit.
We can deprive them of basic needs. What's the basic need in this country? Job. A job. Why? What does a job do? A job gets you your physiological needs. A job gets you safety and security. A job gets you belongingness, and a job gets you self-esteem. Does it not? If you threaten that basic need and you say you can get all these basic needs if you just do this one behavior, what do people do? They tend to do it. So I'm still waiting for my markers here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm stalling. All right, but the point I'm trying to get at is when you tell someone to stop a behavior, it doesn't take care of the need that drove the behavior in the first place. So let me give you another example. Are you ready? You have a child, he's 3 years old, and it's gonna be gross. I'm sorry, you guys are eating. Forgive me for this. It's gonna be gross. But the child is just picking their nose. I mean, they're digging in their nose. And you as a parent say, stop. The child looks at you with this resentment at 3 years old. Because why? What have you just told the child to stop doing?
Not letting the child do what he wants.
Well, that's true, but children are gonna wanna do whatever they want anyway. You're gonna have to tell them to stop. But hopefully you tell them something else. That child, let's do Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is that child gaining self-esteem by picking their nose? No. Is that child gaining belongingness to a nose-picking club?
He doesn't
No.
do all of it.
No, yeah. Is that child picking their nose because they feel safe and secure? No. Is that child picking their nose because they have a nasal obstruction and can't breathe? Yeah, that's what's happening. That's what a booger is. It obstructs your breathing. So the child can't breathe and they go to pick their nose. And when they go to pick their nose, you tell them to stop. Okay, so that's what you say. You say stop. And when you look at punishment, the goal of punishment is the frequency of behavior over time. You're reducing the frequency of behavior over time by presenting what we call a negative stimulus in a sick way, clear, immediate, and consistent. Okay, this is what it is. So you're telling someone to stop the frequency of behavior over time. Now here's the problem. When that kid stops picking their nose, what do you think they do? I'll tell you exactly what they do. They walk away and they go around the corner. And what do? They pick their nose. Now let me give you another example. You were speeding down the freeway. You see a police officer, what do? You stop. Police officer right next to you, wave to him, wave to him. And then the police officer pulls off the freeway and what do? All right. Or the biosafety officer is coming down and you're eating in the lab. What do? Oh, put it in the drawer. That's right, or in your bag. This is good. See, Rock, you're not supposed to know the answer to this. All right. The point is, in psychology, B.F. Skinner found this out, that when you remove the negative stimulus and you punish in clear, immediate, consistent way, but when you move the negative stimulus, the behavior goes right back to normal. Right back to normal. Okay, and that's punishment. That's stuff. And you have to remember that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when someone's behaving, they're not behaving randomly. They're behaving because they have a challenge to a basic need. And so when you tell them to stop behaving, you're not taking care of the need that's driving the behavior in the first place. You're depriving them of that. So what you've got to do instead as a leader is you've got to say the word start. And when you say start, what you're doing now is the frequency of behavior over time is going up. This is what you're doing as a leader. You're saying start. You're replacing an unsafe behavior with a safer one. And you're saying, I understand you have a need to behave, but what I would like for you to do is I'd like for you to start blowing your nose instead of picking. I'd like you to start playing in the park instead of in the street. Because as a parent, if I say stop playing in the street, they'll just wait till I leave and then they'll start playing in the street again. You see what I'm saying? So in the lab, when we're leaders and we see a behavior that's risky, we have to say start. Now there are two repercussions. There's what we call positive and negative reinforcement, okay? Most of us know what positive reinforcement is. To do something right, I give you a gift. Most of us are familiar with it, but very few of us understand negative reinforcement. And I'll tell you a story about this, okay? I was 8 years old and I decided that if I did dishes poorly, I'd never be asked to do them again. It was a brilliant idea. And so I went home that night and I really messed up on dishes, like really bad. Now, my father, he believed in two things: Yoda, the little green dude, from Star Wars, and Mark Twain. And Yoda, he would say, there's no such thing as try. There's either do or do not. Okay, no such thing as try. So when we would always say, Dad, I'll try, my dad would say, no, you're gonna either do it or you're not. And then Mark Twain, never argue with an idiot, because he just brings you down to that level and beats you at it, right? So my dad believed in those things. We were raised that way. So the night comes and I failed to do the dishes intentionally. And my mom goes in and she goes, oh my gosh, and she calls my dad in. My dad goes in and I'm getting ready to get yelled at. I'm getting ready to be punished. I'm getting ready to be yelled. And my dad leaves the house. And my mom says, well, I guess you can go play. So I go and I play with my cars. And about 30 minutes later, my dad comes in the house. He calls me downstairs. I said, Dad. He goes, son, it looks like we had an issue with the dishes. I said, yes, Dad, I tried. And my dad said, son, you know me. It's not about trying. We got to get it done. I said, yeah, but Dad, I really did try. And Mark Twain, he would say, Twain, I'm not going to argue with you. We're not arguing here. He said, but here's the deal. I don't need you to try to do the dishes. I need you to do them. So here's what I've done. The last 30 minutes, I've gone to every single neighbor and asked them to do their dishes. They've all agreed. So you're going to start on the left, you go all the way around the cul-de-sac, and when you're done doing all their dishes, you're going to come back here and do it just right. And when you get it perfect, then you can stop doing that. They'll do it every night. Does that sound good? That's negative reinforcement, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. If someone's messing up in the lab, you don't let them get out of that task. Oh no! This is a perfect time for you to keep doing it just right. And that will stop what we call intentional sneakers. That's negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement does not focus on stopping things. It focuses on starting. Okay, basically says, we're gonna make your life miserable until you get it just right. And once you get it just right, you go back to normal. And that's negative reinforcement. Okay, does that make sense? So as a leader, you have to understand the principle of behavior. When behavior's happening, you can't just walk in and say, why are you behaving? And stop doing this. They had a basic need. Your job is to figure out what that need is and how can you replace the existing behavior that you're not liking with a new behavior that you would like. So instead of, like I said, let's talk about, I hate these signs that say, stop using cell phones in labs. Wait, hold on one sec. Let's talk about a cell phone these days. This is ridiculous. It just absolutely is. What does a cell phone give people these days? Does it give people physiological needs? Yeah, it does. Uber Eats. Does it give people a sense of safety and security?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Does it give people a sense of belongingness?
Yes.
Oh yes. Does it give people a sense of self-esteem?
Oh, yes.
Oh yes. So guess what? If you're going to tell people to stop using cell phones, you lose already. You've lost. It's going to happen. I've seen people using the DSL-4. I've seen people take their arms out of their suits and lift it up and they're using their cell phones on. I've seen it in 3 on videos. They'll be in a Tyvek suit. They'll unzip their Tyvek suit, they'll look around, they'll pull their phone out, and they'll put it back in and zip it back up. You try to tell people to stop using cell phones in labs, it's going to be very different. Instead, what would you tell them to start with? And I'm old enough now, and I am old, where smoking was very popular back when I was growing up. And I was in the workplace, I used to get so mad because I didn't smoke and I thought it was so unfair. But every single hour, all the smokers would get a 10-minute break. They'd all go out and smoke for 10 minutes and then they come back in the office. And why did they do that? Well, they didn't want smoking in the office. So they said, well, we'll give you a 10-minute break, you go smoke outside, you come back in after 10 minutes. I'm sorry, the day has come when we have to start acknowledging that more addictive than cigarettes are cell phones. You got 10 minutes every hour to go on your cell phone. Other than that, 50 minutes at work, you're not on your cell phone. That's it. You give them a break, go on that. But you give them a start. This is going to be a solution for you to start rather than to stop. Say it goes in the eating lab. Don't say stop eating in the lab. Say if you're hungry, take a break or eat before you come in the lab. Give them behaviors that they can do rather than telling them to stop. Every behavior a human being does is tied to a basic need. We're not wasteful with our calories. We may waste energy and gas and water, but everything we choose to do, we typically have a purpose. It's tied to something, okay? All right, next leadership challenge. The next leadership challenge is that we're not all going to agree. See, why can't we come to conflict as though we acknowledge the fact that we are going to disagree on things and how people perceive things is going to be very, very real. So there are what we call acceptable standards. These are the standards that are published. They're published in the BMBL, they're published in maybe ISO 35001, maybe they're published in the Texas state laws,
Or the laboratory safety manual.
laboratory safety manuals. These are what we call basic. They're acceptable, okay? They're the lowest standards, Then what we have is we have preferential. So let's assume in biosafety that we have 4 primary controls. We have engineering, we have personal protective equipment, we have SOPs, and we have administrative aspects, okay? Let's focus on engineering. And let's talk about BSL2 labs. Are biosafety cabinets required in BSL2 labs? Are they required in BSL2? Anybody know the answer?
Yes,
The answer is no. Biosafety cabinets are not required in BSL2 labs. How about autoclaves? Or is an autoclave required in a BSL2 lab? Does it have to be in the BSL2 lab? It does not have to be in a BSL2, okay? How about directional airflow?
Yes.
No, it does not. All right, so it does not have to be in there. All right, so when you look at these aspects here, when I build a BSL2 lab, I don't have to include all those in there. It's acceptable. It meets the standard, minimal cost because I have no equipment in there. It's minimal cost. I don't have a lot of time invested because I don't have to train people to work in a biosafety cabinet or an autoclave. I don't have to give them protocols. So it's minimal time invested, extremely liberal. A lot of scientists can do whatever they want to do. And there's no redundancy though. When something goes wrong, there's going to be an exposure and people may get sick. So what's the price? Well, if you go to preferential, you go to the standard and you say +1. So you say, well, in this biosafety level 2 lab, I'm going to go ahead and insert a biosafety cabinet. Now, the minute I put a biosafety cabinet in the lab, I have an increased cost. Because now I've got an increased piece of equipment, I've got maintenance, and I've also have to do training, which means I have an increased time investment. And because I can't just give people a biosafety cabinet and let them, let them do whatever they want to do in it. I have to train them, and I have to give them protocols now. I have to become prescriptive. I've got to give them an SOP. And last but not least, for that value, I'm going to get redundancy. They work in a cabinet, they get additional safety. Now, if I choose in a BSL2 lab to then add an autoclave and directional airflow, what I'm doing now is I'm meeting a standard +2 or more, which basically means I become substantially higher in my cost, substantial time investment, because it's now multiple things that I got to train on. It becomes more restrictive because you've got to do things in a certain way, and it offers multiple levels of redundancy. One of the biggest fights that we have as leaders is that a leader who's going to fund this research is going to look at it differently than a scientist who's going to do the science, who's going to look at it differently than the safety officer. Typically, the safety officer will say, we need ideal. And the scientist will say, no, screw ideal. I want to spend the money on science. I want more time to do my science. I don't want these headaches. They'll want acceptable. Show me in the book that it says that it requires this. And then you have a leader who's responsible for the fiscal future and the reputation of the organization. And they typically will choose right here in the middle of preferential. What we have to understand is that when it comes to safety, everybody's going to have a different opinion. They're going to look at things completely different. And we have to expect that. Be prepared for that. Like, no, don't let this be a frustrating aspect because, again, scientists are going to want to do the science. Safety is going to want to make sure, listen, if Becky loses any one of you, I guarantee you for the rest of her life, she'll regret that. It'll be the worst day of her life. That's what safety officers come to work every day thinking. And a leader is thinking, look, I've got to balance this. I've got to present a good agency with a good reputation, and I can't be too loose and I can't be too much. I've got to be right in the middle, and they've got to balance things. All right. And so typically that's why typically the leaders should never be scientists. They have to be removed from the equation. If they're scientists, they favor science over safety. If they're safety, they favor safety over science. They should literally be someone who listens to both science and safety and makes a decision based on what they're hearing. That's always the best thing. That's what ISO 35001 says. Never should a safety officer report to a scientist. That's never good. That throws out the balance. They report to leadership, who then will balance science and safety in the institution. Okay, make sense?
But why the ideal, the things that I'm seeing in the ideal are more of like, if you're ambitious of having those stuff in the lab. Why this called ideal? It means like something that everyone should follow.
Oh, no, what we're looking at is, I could have called it silver, gold, platinum.
Yes.
What it basically says is if you want ideal, you're gonna have to pay for it. in time and money. If you want preferential, it's a little bit more time and money, and if you want acceptable, it's really not much time and money.
And also you're fine.
All three are fine, absolutely, all three are fine. The question though is to who? See, to a scientist, that's fine. Becky's gonna lose sleep if you're here. The leader is gonna be like, maybe too much, but the leader's gonna lose money if it's here. And they're also may lose scientists. Scientists will be like, I'm done. This is crazy. I gotta wear like 6 pairs of gloves and 8 hats and, so you have to like, it's gonna be valid. But the reality is like, if you walk into the room prepared for this, it's a much better attitude than if you walk in the room saying, I disagree and you're angry. You gotta understand everybody's perspective. There's a scientist perspective, a leadership perspective, and the safety officer perspective. And they're not all gonna agree. They're all very different perspectives because they all have different jobs. So as a leader, you're gonna have to understand, we have 3 different perspectives and we're gonna have to really listen to all of them. That's it, Make sense?
As a graduation, you just follow the.
Right.
I forced you guys to come here today is because I want you to say. If you hurt yourself, you lose your life, not putting Becky, the
Yeah,
professor will be the first one
that's right.
feeling guilty, and I will not have good sleep. So now it's Becky, but I was a big, we're all with that. I'm in the middle. I want you guys to be well protected, but I can't afford those expensive equipment. That's why I asked Becky, asked Joe, and asked Nelson, give me, the candidate safety. You guys did. So, as a PI, as a professor, I want my lab in the middle because I don't have money to buy all those equipment.
That's right.
But I need a minimum equipment for you guys to, to protect yourself. But I want you to have a good sense of, product where you have to talk.
This is the neat part, ladies and gentlemen. If we look at biorisk management as engineering, PPE, SOPs, and administrative aspects, this is what the 4 primary controls are. I travel the world and I go to under-resourced countries all the time. Unfortunately, in this country, because we have a lot of money, we tend to rely on these 2 alone. Meaning, when I go into this country, I see phenomenal engineering, phenomenal PPE, crappy SOPs, and certainly a lack of investment in leadership, meaning poor training, poor compliance, poor, all sorts of things. I go to places like Pakistan, Honduras, all these under-resourced countries, and I see phenomenal SOPs and admin aspects and accountability and poor engineering and people. You can still run. What I like to say is your average on this should be what we call a 3.0. Meaning, if you have A's here and you have C's here, you're still running at an acceptable and a good biosafety, good biorisk level. And if you have A's here and C's here, you're still running at a good one. It's when you fall below that 3.0 that you start running into a problem. So whenever you don't have the money to spend here, invest here. And the behaviors, and the accountability, and the training, and the compliance, that's where you're going to gain substantial amount of savings. Okay, I learned that in the former Soviet Union. When I went back and visited scientists that work in the bioweapons facilities in the former Soviet Union, which is one of the reasons why we have biodefense still to this day. The scientists there, they didn't have phenomenal. In fact, they laughed at the United States. You spend millions and millions of dollars when all you need is a cabinet. And if you use your cabinet safely, that's all you need. And they laugh at us. Like they used to have just a room with a biosafety cabinet where they would do the most dangerous work. And why? They didn't focus on the money here. They focused on this. And you didn't do it. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, that's true. But if you didn't participate in the behavior in the right way, you were fired. In a story, there's no tolerance for your individuality. It was you did it this way or you were fired. In a story. And so there was no contemplation. And so they would spend the money and their resources here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when we write an SOP, who in this room, you guys know each other, I think a little better than I do. Who in this room is somebody who's very straightforward, somebody very honest, somebody who's gonna answer a question with no filter? Like if you had, okay, yeah, I know you, Heather. Unfortunately, Heather may already know this exercise.
Shane's Goggin.
Shane's already may have done this as well. Becky may have done this as well. Come on, anybody new here? Anybody new? Anybody? Okay, very good. And your name? Oh, is there a short? Can I?
AK.
AK. Perfect. Thank you. All right. As a behaviorist, I want you to know this. When you write an SOP and you give it away as a leader, you have to remember that you're not writing an SOP, you're writing an SOP. And I know that's how we feel about SOPs, but the reality is it's standard operating behavior. Now, when we want people to behave, we have to realize that there are 5 things that are needed. 5 critical elements are needed for you to have compliance with an SOP. All right, so here's what we're doing. AK, you and I are walking, right? And we're walking in Florida, and we're walking, and all of a sudden a sinkhole comes and you fall down into that sinkhole. Okay, now in that sinkhole, it's 35 feet down, 10 feet of water. AK, you know how to swim? Okay, so 5 feet of water. Now in that 5 feet of water, AK is down there in the 5 feet of water. And all of a sudden, AK, you notice, and I'm getting so old, I have to ask this question. Have you ever seen that movie Jaws? Okay, good. See, this is, I'm old. Everybody used to be old. Jaws is a big great white shark. You know, great white shark, right? Big teeth, nasty, right? It's in that 5 feet of water. Okay, so you're down there with Jaws, looking pretty hungry. What do? What's the first thing you do?
I try to escape.
Can't. 35 feet down, you're in a hole, 5 feet of water. What do you do then? Can't escape. What do? You scream. You scream for help?
First, I'll try to fight with it.
Well, if you've seen Jaws, you're not fighting with that very long. All right, AK. So what do? You scream for help?
Yeah.
Go ahead and scream for help, AK. Oh, I hear AK's call for help. I hear it. So I walk over and I say, AK, that looks like a pretty big risk down there. What would you say to me?
Yes.
That's what you would say to me. And I say, AK, it'd be a great benefit if you got out of there.
Help.
And I turn around and I walk away. Now, AK, do me a favor, stand up for me. Put your arm behind your back. The next morning you see me and you lost your arm as a result of that shark. What would you say to me?
I can't say
Very good. All right, grab a seat. AK, now listen, this really is very hurtful from a behavioral standpoint. This is what I see. So often when we train people to work in biological laboratories or even chemical laboratories, we say, listen, you see that sign on the door? There's a risk. And oh, it would be a great benefit if you follow the rules. All right, thank you. Welcome to the lab. And then when they hurt themselves, rather than them hitting us and attacking us, we attack them. Like, how could you do that? Whenever we want people to follow a behavior, it takes more than just saying to them, hey, that's a risk. And hey, it'd be a great benefit if you follow the rules. Those are only the first 2 that we need. All right, let's go to number 3. So you're back in the pit with the shark. You have both arms. And I throw you a rope, but I don't hold on to the other end of it. So basically what I've done is I've given you a resource. Oh, this hurts my heart even most. What hurts my heart is we finally secure a biosafety cabinet and you never teach people how to use it. What is the benefit of a biosafety cabinet if no one knows how to properly work it? What is the benefit of PPE if you don't know how to put it on and take it off? You can't just throw resources at people and say, well, now they can follow the SOP. Because all you're going to do with that rope is what? Whip the shark, right? It's not going to happen. The last thing, or the second to last thing that you need is you're going to need skills. Now, if I pull you out of that pit and I say, wow, you were amazing, I'm going to hire you at SeaWorld to swim with sharks. And I ask you, what type of training do you need to swim with sharks? Would you want training in a PowerPoint? Okay, how about training like, would you want a video to watch?
I will.
You'd want a video? Would that make you feel like you could swim with sharks?
I'll train how to swim.
Yes. So when you talk about skills, you're not talking about things you get a PowerPoint or a computer program or a video. You're talking about people actually being able to practice it and do it over and over again. And here's the last one. It's called self-efficacy. And what I mean by that is, how many of you know how to swim? Raise your hand and keep your hands up, okay? Keep your hands up. Raise them high. Keep them all up high. Of those who know how to swim with your hands up, how many of you can swim a mile? Now stop right there. Keep your hands up.
Swim what?
A mile.
Oh.
Okay. Look, I didn't say a mile in a minute. I didn't say a mile and a half an hour. I didn't say a mile in the ocean, lake, or whatever. I didn't say any of that. I said a mile and it caused you to doubt your skill. When you doubt your skill, you lack self-efficacy. And if you don't have these 5 things, you will never have sustained behavior that is requested with an SOP. Whenever you as a leader see that someone is not behaving, you have to look at what you as a leader have not provided. Have I not communicated the benefit or the risk of this SOP? Have I not given you the resources? Have I not given you the skills? Do you not have the belief that it even matters? If you don't have these 5 things, you will not have compliance to an SOP. Okay, and by the way, just so you know, that includes children and teenagers. If you're trying to get them to comply with family rules, try starting with those 5 things. It really truly works, okay? And again, as a leader, you should always accept responsibility for failure. And you should always pass success. That's the difference between leadership and management. When leaders succeed, they give the credit to everyone. When leaders fail, they own it. That's the definition of a true leader. A manager will pass failure and own success. And that's the key difference between a manager and a leader, okay? So I know I've got, maybe 10 more minutes. When we look at leadership IQ, I would strongly recommend that you become familiar with emotional intelligence. It's a strategy that's very popular out there. It's used in the business world. I would strongly recommend, basically what emotional intelligence is your ability to empathize with others, to relate to others, your ability to identify your own emotions, to be self-aware. This is how I'm feeling about this. Your ability to self-govern yourself, to regulate your emotions. Rather than saying something off the cuff or sending that email, your ability to actually say, I'm going to slow things down, I'm going to think about this, I'm going to process it before I make the decision to go out. And your ability to make and foster and sustain healthy relationships. That is emotional intelligence. And a lot of people in our industry in science do not have that. They do not have that ability. And because they don't have that ability, they will rub people the wrong way. They will produce friction in relationships, and it's unnecessary drama, and it's really truly unnecessary in the workplace with science. So what I want you to do is, I know you have the slides. This is what I just basically said, but I want to get to the slides here. This is where I want you to see, because first emotional intelligence came out, and as a behaviorist, I was frustrated because I said, you know what, that's cognitive. I'm going to give you behavioral intelligence. So I developed behavioral intelligence. I talked about that. And then I said, we have a lot of people that know what they're doing in Biorisk management that are failing. And so I said, well, now I want to do what we call Biorisk management IQ. This is it. So let's talk about how you can be leaders in safety. I don't want to focus on emotional or behavioral. Let's do human management. First and foremost, if you want to get in with a scientist, you have to be interested in what they're doing. Like, show a genuine interest. Like, I'm interested in what you're working on. Like, explain it to me. And it's so cool because I have talked to the world leading virologists. I mean, these are people that some people view as gods. I'm not a virologist, so I don't. But I will literally walk up to them and be like, can you talk a little bit about what you do and how you do it? And they'll do it. And I'll say to them, okay, thank you so much for that explanation in science. It means absolutely nothing to me. Tell me what the benefit is to the real world, because I need to understand what you do so I can articulate it. And they enjoy these conversations. I'm showing interest in what they're doing. Be encouraging, like, encourage them. Be, when you see frustration, encourage them. Be their #1 fan. Be a fan of science. That's critical as a safety professional. If you're not a fan of science, you don't have a job. Without science, you're unemployed. So be a fan of what they're doing and be supportive and show gratitude. When they succeed, praise them, show gratitude for what they do, and acknowledge frustration. Just so you know, scientists don't get mad at safety and they get mad at not being able to do their job. They get mad with anybody who wants to stand in their way of getting their job done. They get mad because they're in an extremely competitive industry where it's a publish or perish, and quite honestly, I don't have time to deal with this shit. And that's really where they're at. And you can either continue to deny that and push forward and get mad, or you can say, look, I'm here to do whatever I can. I see you're frustrated. I'm here to do whatever I can to support you in this. Let's do this together. Serving people is doing it with people and by people. It's not doing it for people and to people. Your job as a safety professional is not to build a dependency on you. Your job as a safety professional is to increase their capacity to be safe for themselves. That's the goal. And you can't do that 2 or 4 people. You have to do it with them and by them. When we look at self-awareness, You as a safety professional, no matter what is said to you, and trust me, there will be a lot of mean things said. You have to be confident in yourself. And you have to not take things personal, because it's not personal. It really truly is. I mean, very rarely, I mean, we'll find someone who does make it personal. But even when you call them out on it, you can say, hey, you know, it is being personal. You're saying things that are personal and professional. Be confident in yourself. Please, please don't just be lip service. Demonstrate your expertise. Show people that you're capable of doing the job that you've been hired to do in safety. Position yourself to always be there and to be trusted. If you are seen as a person that punishes, belittles, shames, blames, then when something goes wrong, you will not be the first person that they talk to. Position yourself to always be the one that they want to talk to. Be there, position yourself there, because let me tell you something, sooner or later, something is going to go wrong. It's just a matter of time. You're human, you're working, mistakes are going to happen. That's just it. Expect them. And when you answer the question, I want you to remember this. So I'm going to tell you a story. I got pulled over by a police officer. I was speeding. And I rolled down my window and I said, yes, you finally caught up to me. And the guy was like, excuse me? I said, well, it's about time. And he's like, the officer's like, what are you talking about? I said, I have been speeding for years. Where have you been? It's about time I get a ticket. And the guy just was rolling. He thought it was the funniest thing. Well, dude, that's the way we should deal with incidents and accidents. It's about time. Thank you for bringing the incident and accident forward. I've been waiting for this for a super long time. Thank you very much. Not like, oh my God, what happened? Like you're shocked or something. Are you kidding me? These are humans. They're going to make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, seriously, make it a positive experience, not a negative one. Position yourself to be helpful. Demonstrate your value by connecting. Safety is not just about safety. If you're doing safety properly, you know everybody. You know what they're working on. You know what their needs are. And so when somebody has something and they're like, hey, I'm really not using this cabinet. Can you move this out? And you're like, oh, you know what? So-and-so down the hallway needs a biosafety cabinet. Yeah, absolutely. But demonstrate your value by being more than just safety. All right, demonstrate that, like care about that, and then be very supportive. When you talk about self-regulation, serve versus prescribe. Try to serve people, don't tell them what to do. Ask them what they want to do and then help them get that done. Celebrate people when they write a paper or publish a paper or it's their birthday, like that's another thing. Get to know their birthdays and celebrate them and try to find out good things to celebrate. Make excuses to celebrate. Never take things personal. Bad days are going to happen. They always do. Always ask for feedback. You should be asking for feedback every year. How are we doing in serving you? How am I doing? Anything I can be doing better? Anything you need that I'm not getting done? Always look for it. And it's amazing because sometimes you'll get feedback you don't want. And sometimes you get feedback that you do. But the reality is you should always be asking. And last but not least, you can't do safety behind a desk. If you care and you're doing safety, you're visible and available. You're around. And so much so that people don't hide eating chicken biscuits in front of you. You want that transparency. When you walk in and they're eating a chicken biscuit, you go, hey, how you doing? They're like, oh, hey, probably shouldn't be doing this, huh? Probably not a good idea. Okay, well, I'll try my best. Good, let's move on. I mean, we don't have to file formal reports on that. Our job is to come in, be present, be available, and be your friend, serve you, not necessarily be a police officer. Share all that you can, solve problems, don't create them. Be collaborative, be interested in others, and do what you say. That's, again, social acceptance. If you practice these things, your biorisk management IQ, your emotional intelligence, your biorisk management safety IQ, you're going to go through the roof. If you want to do an exercise, come up with an acronym that you believe, when you say lead, what verb would you do in each of these? Now, I'll tell you the most common. I've been doing this for years as well. Number one, L is listen. I will listen more than I talk. And not only do you listen with your ears, you listen with your eyes. Watch what people are doing. Watch how they're responding to themselves. So I pledge that I will listen. E is typically empathize. Promise that rather than putting my agenda first, I will put myself in the position of the person and try to understand where they're coming from. A, I'm going to adapt to a situation. That's the worst part. Safety, the hardest part with safety is that you come into work thinking you're going to do one thing one day, and then your day is destroyed because what you were planning to get done doesn't get done because all of a sudden something unexpected happens. You're going to have to be able to adapt. and to the needs of the day, so to speak.
That's
And
the
then-
only thing that's the same every day.
That's right. And then last but not least is demonstrate. And what we mean by that is that you demonstrate your value, you demonstrate your leadership, you act the way that you want to act towards you. You remain professional, engaged. Those are the number one acronyms that we typically do when we turn it over. But a lot of people say decide, energize. There's all sorts of acronyms. But if you write your leadership statement out and you say, well, this is what I'm going to commit myself to, then it's a good leadership statement for you in biosafety or biorisk. Okay.
I just want to add that several of us in the department have taken, specialized training, whether it's biosafety level 2 or whatever, from Sean before. And so everything that he talks about on, being safety leaders, like we try to do that in our department. We want to be a resource. We want you to reach out when you have a problem because we want to help you. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that you guys go home safe. So I just want to say, like, we do try to take this and implement it in how we act. So thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
When you say celebrate somebody's birthday and all. The guy was down under and feeling low. So they decided to have a big birthday celebration. He opposed it, to the court almost, and then he got the lawyers to pay $400,000 from the company for his mental harassment. He didn't want the birthday to be celebrated. They say he won.
Oh, and he won.
Yeah.
Probably honestly.
Well, in the end, the birthday celebration gave him what he wanted.
What is
He got $400,000. This is good. So it was a good thing. The biosafety officer was right on that. Yes.
First of all, was the entire neighborhood ditches that night? Like,
Did-
really did you?
I did. I really did. 5 houses. See, back in the day when I grew up, everybody had dinner at the same time. Many people who are my age may remember that. That was actually common practice. Like at 6 o'clock, you didn't knock on people's doors because they were having dinner. And so at 6 o'clock, we had dinner, and my dad went right around 6:45, 7 o'clock and knocked on the doors. And yeah, I did dishes. And the pans were still hot. Yeah, I really did.
And the second question, did the police give you?
Yeah, he did. He knocked it down. He did. I was going 15 miles an hour and he put it down to 5, but he thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. He thought it was so funny. And I was like, well, it was the truth though. I mean, I was like, well, it's about time, man. I've been speeding for 4 years. I haven't gotten a ticket yet. I thought that was the funniest thing.
I do have one regarding the dishwashing
Yeah.
approach. What should be done in case you keep washing not properly?
Okay.
Another approach is so that
Okay, so there comes a time when if you've reinvested and reinvested and reinvested and the person just is not capable of doing the job, then it was a hiring issue. Let me explain what I mean by that. When the job is climbing a tree and we hire a dolphin, that is not the dolphin's fault. And we often we do that sometimes. We hire somebody and we invest in them and they are not capable of doing the job. And we keep investing in them and they're just not capable at that point in time. They're just not capable. You've hired a dolphin to climb a tree and you have to, in essence, own that. That's one of the things last night we talked about. One of the things that is a very scary issue in biosciences or life sciences is the way we hire people. Sometimes we hire people and it's not their fault that they're dolphins. It's our fault that we didn't identify that they're a dolphin before we hired them to climb a tree. And that's where you get in trouble. And so I strongly recommend as leaders that we make sure that our hiring processes are apt and we onboard and offboard properly, because it can cause a lot of problems in safety and science if we don't focus on this. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys very much. Have a great day.
Now you guys are leader also, okay? You are going to be the one leader.
Oh, by the way, I was standing up here. You guys feel free. There's plenty of cookies and they look really good. And I know you were afraid to get them while I was standing up. So.